Ever feel like you're drowning in all the productivity advice out there?
Oh, absolutely.
There's so many books and systems, it's overwhelming.
It really is.
Well, today we're going to do a deep dive into one that I think really stands out. Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Okay.
It's packed with actionable strategies, and we're going to break them down so you can actually use them.
Great.
What makes Clear's approach so effective is it's not about those massive overnight transformations.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the power of tiny changes that compound over time.
Absolutely.
Like how just a 1% improvement each day adds up to significant growth over a year.
I like that.
Feels so much more doable
Right.
than those drastic overhauls that never seem to stick.
Exactly.
But where does this tiny changes philosophy come from?
Well, Clear himself had a pretty dramatic experience back in high school that really shaped his thinking.
Okay.
He suffered a devastating baseball injury
Wow.
that left him struggling to even walk.
Oh, no.
His recovery wasn't about some miracle cure. Okay.
It was about this relentless pursuit of small daily improvements.
Wow.
Eventually, he not only recovered, but even made the varsity team.
Oh, that's inspiring.
Yeah.
It really highlights the power of consistency and those seemingly insignificant daily wins.
Absolutely. And this concept isn't just limited to personal anecdotes.
Okay.
Clear points to the British cycling team as a prime example.
I've heard of them.
They went from being mediocre to dominating the Olympics and Tour de France.
Wow.
And it was by focusing on making these 1% improvements in every single aspect of their training.
Really?
From the type of pillows their athletes slept on to even just the way they washed their hands
Oh, and
to reduce the risk of illness.
So it's not just about putting in the effort, but it's also about being strategic and intentional with even the smallest details.
Absolutely. And that's where Clear's emphasis on systems over goals comes in.
Okay.
He argues that achieving a goal is a momentary change.
Okay.
But building a system creates lasting success. So instead of fixating on that finish line, we should focus on building a solid routine that keeps us moving forward.
Exactly.
Okay.
Plus, goals can sometimes be counterproductive
Right.
because they create this I'll be happy when mentality that delays your satisfaction.
That makes sense.
With a systems-first approach, you actually find happiness in the process itself.
Okay, that's a mindset shift I need to make.
I think a lot of us do.
But how do we actually go about building these systems for better productivity?
Yeah.
I'm guessing this is where those 4 laws of behavior change come in.
You got it.
Okay.
Clear's 4 laws.
All right.
Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
Okay.
These provide a framework for designing systems that actually work.
Okay.
It's about understanding the psychology behind our habits and using it to our advantage.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Let's break them down. First up, make it obvious.
Right.
How do we make those good productivity habits stand out in our busy lives?
It starts with awareness. Before you can change anything, you need to understand your current habits. Clear suggests creating a habits scorecard.
Habits scorecard.
Where you list your daily routines and categorize them as positive, negative, or neutral.
Got it.
It's like taking inventory of your actions to see where you can improve.
So simple but powerful.
Right.
It's like shining a light on those unconscious patterns that might be sabotaging our productivity.
Precisely. Once you have a clear picture of your habits, you can start designing your environment to make the good ones more obvious.
Okay.
And one highly effective strategy is called implementation intentions.
Implementation intentions. What's that all about?
It's about getting specific with your intentions.
Okay.
Instead of vaguely saying, I'll exercise more.
Right.
Create a concrete plan like, I will go for a 30-minute run at 7 a.m. in the park.
Okay.
The more detailed, the better.
Okay.
It eliminates any wiggle room for excuses.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
It's like scheduling a meeting with yourself for your good habits.
Exactly. And there's another technique that works well in conjunction with this, habit stacking.
Habit stacking.
It's all about linking a new habit to an existing one.
Okay.
For example, after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 5 minutes.
So you're leveraging the power of a routine you already have to trigger a new behavior.
Right. It's much easier to stick with something new when it's anchored to an existing habit.
Okay.
You're basically creating a chain reaction of positive actions.
I can see how that would make it harder to skip the new habit.
Yeah.
It becomes part of a seamless flow.
And don't underestimate the power of your environment.
Okay.
Think back to those British cyclists obsessing over every tiny detail.
Right.
You can apply that same mindset to your workspace, your home, even your digital spaces.
So if I want to read more, I should make sure there's always a book within reach and maybe put my phone in another room to minimize distractions.
Now you're getting it.
Okay.
Even seemingly insignificant tweaks to your surroundings can have a huge impact on your behavior. Yeah, Clear even uses the example of researchers who put fly-shaped stickers in urinals at the Amsterdam airport.
Okay.
It sounds silly, but it significantly reduced spillage.
Really?
Because men instinctively aimed at what they thought was a bug.
Oh, that's so funny.
It's a funny example, but it illustrates how powerful those subtle cues can be.
That's a great story. It's amazing how our brains can be influenced by such simple things.
It really is.
So we've got our scorecard, implementation intentions, habit stacking, and environmental design, all working together to make those good habits more obvious. What's next?
Well, making those good habits obvious is a great first step. But even with the best intentions, we can still struggle with motivation.
Right.
That's where Clear's second law comes in. Make it attractive.
I'm all ears. How do we make those sometimes tedious but necessary tasks, actually appealing?
Well, it's about tapping into our brain's reward system.
Okay.
We're naturally drawn to things that bring us pleasure.
Right.
So why not use that to our advantage?
Okay, I like where this is going.
One of Clear's suggestions is temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling.
Yeah.
That sounds intriguing.
It's a clever strategy where you link an action you want to do with something you need to do.
Okay.
Think back to the student who hacked his stationary bike to only play Netflix when he was pedaling at a certain speed.
Oh, I remember that.
He basically made binge watching contingent on exercise.
Yes.
Exactly. By bundling those two activities, he made the less desirable one, exercising, much more appealing.
Okay.
You can apply this to your own life.
Okay.
Maybe you only listen to your favorite podcast while doing chores.
Right.
Or you treat yourself to a relaxing bath after a productive work session.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's like tricking your brain into enjoying those necessary but not so fun tasks.
And it's not just about manipulating your environment.
Okay.
It's also about shifting your mindset.
Okay.
Clear talks about the importance of focusing on who you want to become rather than just what you want to achieve.
Okay. I'm not sure I follow. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's about cultivating identity-based habits.
Okay.
Instead of saying, I want to lose weight, try shifting your language to, I am the type of person who prioritizes health and fitness.
Okay.
It's a subtle change, but it can have a profound impact on your motivation.
So it's about aligning your actions with the person you envision yourself to be.
Exactly. You're not just checking off tasks.
Right.
You're embodying a value or belief.
I like that.
And this brings up another important point.
Okay.
We're heavily influenced by the people around us.
That makes sense. We're social creatures after all.
Right.
But are there certain types of people we're more likely to imitate?
Clear highlights 3 groups that have a particularly strong influence. The close are family and friends.
Got it.
Many.
Yeah.
The larger community or tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And the powerful.
Okay.
Those with status and prestige.
All right.
We tend to adopt the habits of those closest to us.
Okay.
Conform to the norms of our community.
Right.
And emulate those we admire.
So choosing your social circle wisely can actually make it easier to develop good habits.
Absolutely. Think about those New Year's resolutions that fizzle out by February.
Yeah.
It's often because we haven't changed our environment or the people we surround ourselves with.
Right.
If you want to make a habit stick, find a tribe where that habit is the norm.
Okay, that's great advice. But even when we make a habit obvious and attractive, sometimes it's still hard to get started.
Yeah.
Life gets in the way, we feel overwhelmed, or we just plain procrastinate.
Yeah.
What do we do then?
That's where the third law comes in. Make it easy.
Okay.
This is all about reducing friction
Okay.
and making those good habits as effortless as possible.
Got it.
One of Clear's most practical strategies is the 2-minute rule.
Okay. I've heard of that one. Tell me more.
It's deceptively simple, but incredibly effective.
Okay.
You'd break down any new habit into a 2-minute version.
All right.
Want to start exercising?
Yeah.
Just commit to putting on your workout clothes.
Oh, okay.
Want to write a book? Start with just one sentence.
It seems almost too easy.
I know, right?
But I guess the idea is to remove any barrier to entry.
Exactly. You're building momentum and creating a positive feedback loop.
Okay.
Once you've overcome that initial inertia, it's much easier to keep going.
But what about those tasks that can't be condensed into 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Like writing a report or cleaning the entire house?
Even those bigger tasks can be broken down into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Okay.
Instead of writing a whole report, focus on just one section.
Right.
Instead of cleaning the whole house, tackle one room at a time.
So it's all about creating a series of mini wins that build up to the larger goal.
Precisely. And remember the power of environmental design we talked about earlier.
Right.
You can use that to your advantage here too.
Okay.
Prime your environment to make good habits easier.
Okay.
If you want to cook healthy meals, chop your veggies the night before.
Well, that's a good idea.
Want to get to the gym in the morning? Lay out your workout clothes and pack your bag ahead of time.
It's like setting yourself up for success before you even start.
Right. You're removing any obstacles that might stand in your way.
I like it.
And don't forget about the flip side.
Okay.
Make it difficult to indulge in bad habits.
Right.
Delete those tempting apps from your phone.
Okay.
Unsubscribe from those email lists that clutter your inbox.
Yeah.
Move those unhealthy snacks to the back of the pantry.
Oh, right. Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. A little bit of friction can go a long way in breaking those negative patterns.
These are all great tips.
I hope so.
I'm starting to feel like I can actually tackle those habits I've been putting off.
Good.
But there's one thing I still struggle with. Staying motivated in the long run.
Yeah.
How do we keep that momentum going when the initial excitement wears off?
That's a great question. And it leads us to Clear's fourth law.
Okay.
Make it satisfying.
Make it satisfying.
This is all about tapping into our brain's reward system and making those good habits enjoyable so we're more likely to stick with them.
Okay, tell me more about this. How do we make something like, say, paying bills on time actually satisfying?
Well, maybe not paying bills, but the key is to find ways to reward yourself for good behavior.
Okay.
Even in small ways.
Oh.
Let's say you're trying to stick to a budget.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you resist an impulse purchase, transfer a small amount of money to a savings account earmarked for something you really want.
Okay.
Like a vacation or a new gadget.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
It's like giving yourself a little bonus for being responsible.
Exactly. And remember, those tiny rewards can add up over time.
Right.
Both financially and emotionally.
So we're training our brains to associate those good habits with positive feelings.
Precisely. And don't underestimate the power of visual reinforcement.
Okay.
Habit tracking. Whether it's a simple checklist, a fancy app, or just marking X's on a calendar.
Right.
Can be incredibly motivating.
Okay.
Seeing that streak of successful days can be a powerful incentive to keep going.
It's like a tangible reminder of your progress.
Right. It helps you stay focused on the long-term goal and provides a sense of accomplishment, even if the individual steps seem small.
This is all making so much sense.
Good.
But what about those days when we slip up?
Yeah.
I mean, life happens, right?
It does.
How do we get back on track without feeling like a complete failure?
That's where self-compassion comes in.
Okay.
Clear has a great saying.
Okay.
Never miss twice.
Okay.
If you miss a day, don't beat yourself up.
Right.
Just get back on track as soon as possible.
That's reassuring. It takes the pressure off striving for perfection.
Exactly what matters most is the overall trend, not the occasional slip-up.
Right.
It's about building consistency over time, not punishing yourself for being human.
I love it. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground with these first 4 laws.
We have.
But I'm curious, does Clear offer any additional strategies for those of us who are ready to take our habits to the next level?
He does. In the later chapters of Atomic Habits, he dives into some more advanced tactics that build upon these foundational principles.
Yeah. Perfect. That's exactly what I was hoping for.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Atomic Habits, and I'm really excited to explore those advanced strategies you mentioned.
Right.
What does Clear suggest for taking our habits from good to great?
Well, he starts by tackling a question that I think a lot of us struggle with.
Okay.
The role of talent.
Right.
Are some people just naturally gifted at certain things?
Yeah.
Or is it all about hard work and dedication?
It's the age-old question.
Right. And he uses the example of 2 incredible athletes.
Okay.
Michael Phelps.
Oh, yeah?
And Hitchmel Garouge.
Okay. I know Phelps, but I'm not familiar with El Garouge.
He's considered one of the greatest middle-distance runners of all time.
Oh, wow.
And here's the fascinating thing.
Okay.
They both have the same inseam length.
Oh, wow.
Meaning their legs are the same length.
Okay.
But their bodies are completely different.
Okay.
Phelps has a long torso and shorter legs, which is perfect for swimming.
Right.
While El Garouge has a shorter torso and longer legs, ideal for running.
That's a really interesting point. So it's not just about raw talent, but also about finding the right fit for your natural inclinations.
Exactly. Clear argues that we should focus on working with our genes, not against them.
Okay.
We all have unique strengths and predispositions, and we're more likely to excel in areas that align with those natural inclinations.
Right.
He's not saying we're limited by our genes,
Okay.
but that understanding them can help us focus our efforts more effectively.
That makes a lot of sense, but how do we figure out what those strengths are?
Right.
I mean, it's not always obvious.
Right, and that's where personality comes in.
Okay.
Clear dives into the big 5 personality traits.
Okay.
Openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism.
Okay.
And these traits can provide insights into how we approach challenges, interact with others, and regulate our emotions.
Right.
All of which can impact our ability to build and maintain habits.
Okay, I've heard of those traits, but how do they actually relate to habit formation?
Well, for example, someone high in conscientiousness tends to be organized, disciplined, and goal-oriented,
Right.
making it easier for them to stick with habits like planning, scheduling, and staying focused.
Okay.
On the other hand, someone high in openness might thrive on novelty and variety.
Okay.
So they might benefit from incorporating more flexibility and experimentation into their routines.
So it's about tailoring our approach to our individual personality.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
The key is to understand yourself,
Yeah.
your strengths, your weaknesses, and your natural inclinations, and then design a system that complements who you are.
That's a really helpful way to think about it.
Yeah.
So we've got our genes and our personality influencing our habits. But what about motivation?
Yeah.
How do we stay motivated when the going gets tough,
Yeah.
especially when those results aren't immediate?
That's a question, Keurig. Clear addresses by highlighting the importance of finding the Goldilocks zone.
Okay, I love a good fairy tale reference.
Yeah.
But what does Goldilocks have to do with habits?
It's about finding the right level of challenge.
Oh.
Not too easy,
Right.
not too hard,
Okay.
but just right.
Okay.
If a task is too easy, we get bored and disengaged.
Right.
If it's too difficult, we get frustrated and give up.
All right.
But when we find that sweet spot
Okay.
where we're challenged but not overwhelmed,
Right.
we enter a state of flow
Oh, yeah.
that is both motivating and rewarding.
So it's about pushing ourselves just enough to keep things interesting without setting ourselves up for failure.
Precisely. Clear cites research suggesting that for optimal motivation, a task should be about 4% beyond our current ability.
Oh, wow.
This level of challenge keeps us engaged and helps us grow without being so difficult that it becomes demotivating.
That's a fascinating insight. But how do we apply that in our daily lives?
Right.
Do we have to calculate the difficulty percentage for everything we do?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's more about being mindful of your skill level and gradually increasing the challenge as you improve.
Okay.
You start with small, manageable steps and then progressively push yourself outside of your comfort zone.
Okay.
The key is to find that balance between stretching yourself and setting realistic expectations.
Okay, so it's those tiny gains again, but this time applied to the level of challenge within the habit itself.
Right. And this ties into another important point Clear makes,
Okay.
the danger of boredom.
Right.
We often abandon habits not because they're too hard,
Okay.
but because they become monotonous.
Oh, yeah.
We crave novelty and excitement.
Yes.
So it's easy to get sidetracked by the next shiny new thing.
Right.
Even if our old habit was working.
I know that feeling all too well. So how do we combat that habit boredom?
Clear suggests constantly looking for ways to keep your habits engaging.
Okay.
Once you've mastered the basics, experiment with variations, set new challenges, or find ways to inject some fun into the routine.
So if I'm getting bored with my usual running route, I could try a new trail or sign up for a race.
Exactly. It's about keeping things fresh and challenging yourself in new ways.
Right.
Mastery requires practice,
Right.
but it doesn't have to be tedious.
I like that all of this is great advice.
I hope so.
It seems like tracking plays a big part in Claire's approach.
Yeah.
We've touched on it throughout this deep dive,
Yeah.
but can you explain how it all fits together?
Tracking is a crucial element of habit formation.
Okay.
Clear dedicates a whole chapter to it,
Okay.
emphasizing its power for both motivation and accountability.
Okay.
It's not just about checking boxes on a to-do list.
Right.
It's about creating visual evidence of your progress, which can be incredibly satisfying.
Right.
It's like a tangible reminder that you're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
Even when those tiny gains seem insignificant in the moment.
So it's like that sense of accomplishment you get when you see a streak on your fitness tracker
Exactly.
that keeps you coming back for more.
And it also helps us stay honest with ourselves.
Okay.
It's easy to overestimate our consistency, but a habit tracker lays it all out there.
Right.
Showing us exactly where we're succeeding and where we need to improve.
All
It's
right.
like a reality check for our habits.
That makes a lot of sense. But I've tried those habit tracking apps before,
Mm-hmm.
and I always seem to abandon them after a while.
Yeah.
Any tips for making habit tracking stick?
One effective strategy is to integrate it into your existing routine.
Okay.
Maybe you track your habits first thing in the morning.
Right.
Or right before bed.
Right.
Or you could tie it to another habit.
Right.
Like, after I brush my teeth, I will update my habit tracker.
Habit stacking for habit tracking. I love it.
And don't be afraid to experiment with different methods until you find what works best for you.
Okay.
Whether it's a simple notebook, a spreadsheet, or a fancy app.
Right.
The key is to find a system you enjoy using.
Okay.
If it feels like a chore, you're less likely to stick with it.
Okay, that's really helpful. But what about those inevitable days when we fall off track?
Life happens, and sometimes we just don't have the energy or willpower to maintain those perfect streaks.
Absolutely nobody's perfect.
Right.
And expecting perfection is a recipe for disappointment.
Yeah.
Clear emphasizes this by saying, never miss twice.
Right.
If you miss one day, don't beat yourself up.
Right.
Just get back on track as soon as possible.
That takes the pressure off. It's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent over the long term.
Exactly. It's the overall trend that matters, not the occasional slip up.
Right.
And that brings us to another powerful tool.
Okay.
Accountability.
Accountability. How does that fit into the picture?
Clear dedicates a whole chapter to the power of accountability,
Okay.
arguing that it can be a game changer, especially when it comes to breaking bad habits or sticking with those challenging ones.
Nice. How do we use accountability to our advantage?
One of his most effective suggestions is creating a habit contract.
Habit contract.
This can be a simple agreement between you and one or two accountability partners.
Where you clearly outline your commitment to a specific habit,
Okay.
the consequences of not following through,
Right.
and then everyone signs off on it.
So it's like putting some skin in the game.
Exactly. And the consequences don't have to be drastic. It could be something as simple as donating to a charity you don't support,
All right.
or doing a chore you really dislike.
Okay.
The key is to make those consequences tangible and immediate.
I can see how that would add some extra motivation. Does Clear offer any examples of this in action?
He shares the story of Brian Harris,
Okay.
an entrepreneur who used a habit contract to achieve his weight loss goals.
Wow.
He set specific targets for his diet and exercise routine.
Okay.
And if he missed those targets, he had to pay his trainer or his wife a predetermined amount of money.
Wow. That's commitment.
It sounds tough.
Yeah.
But it clearly worked for him.
Okay, so we've got tracking and accountability covered. Is there anything else we can do to optimize our habits over time?
Clear stresses the importance of reflection and review. It's one thing to build a habit,
Right.
but it's another to continuously improve it.
Right.
He encourages us to regularly evaluate our progress, identify areas for improvement, and make adjustments as needed.
So it's not enough to just go through the motions. We need to analyze our habits and look for ways to make them even better.
Exactly. Clear practices this himself by conducting an annual review,
Okay.
where he reflects on his progress, identifies areas for improvement, and sets new goals for the coming year.
That's a great idea. It's like a performance review for your habits.
It is, and it doesn't have to be complicated.
Okay.
You can simply ask yourself, what went well this year?
Right.
What didn't go so well? And what did I learn?
Those are great questions.
Yeah.
They force you to really think critically about your habits and identify areas for growth.
And Clear also suggests doing regular integrity reports.
Integrity reports.
This is a time to check in with yourself.
Okay.
And make sure your actions are aligned with your values and your overall goals. It's about ensuring that your habits are serving you, not the other way around.
That's a powerful concept.
Yeah,
So it's not just about achieving those external results. It's also about living a life that feels authentic and meaningful.
Precisely. And that brings us to one final piece of the puzzle.
Oh.
Identity.
Okay, Claire has mentioned identity throughout the book, but I'm still a bit unclear on how it all ties together.
Remember how we talked about identity-based habits?
Yes.
Focusing on who you want to become rather than just what you want to achieve?
Yes, the I am the type of person who statements.
Well, Clear takes this a step further and argues that our identity can actually hinder our growth.
Right.
If we become too attached to a specific version of ourselves.
I'm not sure, Andrew. Can you explain that?
Yeah, if your entire identity is wrapped up in being, say, a lawyer, for example, and something happens that forces you to change careers,
Right.
it can be incredibly difficult to adapt.
Yeah.
Because it feels like you're losing a part of yourself.
That makes sense. It's like your sense of self is tied to that specific role.
Exactly. That's why Clear suggests developing a more flexible sense of self.
Okay.
Instead of defining yourself by your job title or any other external factor,
Right.
focus on the underlying values and qualities that make you who you are.
So instead of I am a lawyer, It becomes, I am the type of person who is analytical, problem-solving, and dedicated to justice.
Precisely. It's a subtle but important shift.
Right.
It allows you to adapt to changing circumstances without losing your core sense of self.
Okay.
You're no longer defined by a specific role or achievement,
Okay.
but by the values that guide your actions.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive.
It has been.
I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how to build better habits and create a more fulfilling life.
I'm glad to hear that.
Any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they embark on their own habit-building journey?
Oh, remember, it's all about those tiny gains, those 1% improvements that compound over time. Make those good habits obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. And most importantly, believe in the person you're becoming.
Right.
You have the power to create lasting change.
This has been an absolutely amazing exploration of atomic habits.
It really has.
We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have.
Me too.
Remember, lasting change is possible.
It is.
One small step at a time.
You got it.
Until next time, keep diving deep